Namaskaram, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much once again joining in this video presentation on the theory of happiness. I'm sure that you have been regularly viewing the various sessions which I'm presenting to you. So, continuing with the topic of theory of happiness, I just want to continue with the earlier concept which I shared with you, which is conditioning. Such of those who have not seen that video, let me give a quick recap. All our paradigms, the mental map with which we are looking at this world and the various world experiences are based on not what the world is, but the way in which we have been conditioned. Now, what do you mean by conditioning? I have explained in my previous video that when we are born as a small child, we have been bombarded with a lot of information by the parents and the society and the teachers and so on. And then we have formed a mental map. So I gave an example of how the religion is being formed in our mind. So we are not born as a particular religious person, maybe Hindu or Muslim or Christian. So we are just born as a possibility. And then when we were small children, we have been constantly given certain information. A constant input of information creates what is called a belief. Belief is something which is not yet experienced. So if you have already experienced something, you don't need to believe it. And Sadhguru has been extensively giving insights about what his belief is all about. I will borrow a few ideas from him. For example, we don't say, I believe that I have a hand. The example what Sadhguru gives in one of his videos. That we don't say that I believe that I have a hand, because there is no question of believing, because you know and you experience that you have a hand. So, but we say that I believe that there is God, because you have not experienced what God is all about. So what you have not really experienced, that becomes a belief. So most of our life runs around the belief that was created by the various input of information coming from our childhood. So once the belief is created, then that belief runs our life. So anything that doesn't become a life experience, that becomes a belief. So belief comes from conformed thinking that I know. When we don't know and we think I know, is one of the dangerous state of a human being. So conditioning is nothing but a borrowed information because of which we have created what is called a mental map, and we see the whole world through the mental map. So this kind of a preformed opinion, which is the result of your past experience or past information that you have gathered over a period of time from this world, that is called a belief or a paradigm. A paradigm is a more sophisticated word for a belief, or you call it as a mental map, the way in which you have wired your mind. Like for example, people are quite happy when there is a bright sunshine, but they feel gloomy when there is no sun and the weather is a bit dull. So we have always formed a certain kind of mental map with which we see this whole world. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to give a wonderful example that when you are wearing a black color glass and then you look at everything looks black, and if you wear a red color glass, then everything looks red. So there is nothing wrong with the realities of the world. It is because of the pair of glass that we are wearing. So we don't see the world as they are, but we see this whole world as what we think they are. So this is exactly what is called conditioning. So I hope that you would have got some fair idea of what do you mean by conditioning. Like for example, some people believe that having alcohol at the end of the day or socializing with the friends gives them a lot of sense of relaxation. So how does this belief is coming from? So there is a constant conditioning of information and few experiences. So we formed the opinion that the chemical means only can relax. Consuming drugs will give you a sense of ecstatic feeling and so on and so forth. So whereas a teetotaler, the guy who doesn't drink or doesn't like alcohol, feels that meditation is a kind of relaxation. So how come one human being has got a repulsive attitude towards alcohol, whereas for another human being that is something is a wonderful thing in his life? So it all depends on the way in which our mind has been conditioned. So why are we discussing this? So the moment that we are conditioned with certain paradigms, we have lost the innumerable opportunities that can unfold in our life because we start looking at everything with our own paradigms. So how do you change your own paradigms? Is there any way we can change our paradigm? I think only human beings can do that. So what has been in psychology argued is that when you can be conditioned, when you can also be unconditioned. What do you mean by unconditioning? Conditioning is the process of creating a belief. Unconditioning is the process of removing that belief. But it's not a one overnight kind of experience, but it requires a lot of efforts. For example, I used to smoke for quite many years. I used to have alcohol as any other youngster because every time when there is an occasion for a party, obviously, whether you like it or not, you join with them and then have a couple of alcohol. So over a period of time, it has become some kind of irritant for me, and then at some point in time, I felt that I must discontinue this habit. So I didn't know how to do it. So I was just going through one of the master's explanation of how the conditioning is happening and how the reverse process of unconditioning can happen. So what it says is that when you are sitting and analyzing the various stages in which you are tempted to have alcohol, and then you run the mental map of the whole process, like for example, so you felt that alcohol gives you a sense of relaxation. Then you try to figure out whether it gave relaxation. And how did you start drinking the alcohol? Did you like the alcohol when you were just sipping it and then it goes through your palates? It's a horrible experience to drink alcohol because it is not something very tasty like a sarbat or something like that. So that experience was horrible. Then gradually I was moving away from my senses, and then there was a bit of numbness in my mind, in my behavior, and then slowly I started blabbering. And those blabbering and senseless talks, I felt it is something is having a social interactions and so on and so forth. That means there was a true self in me, there was a false self in me. So the true self was manifesting and the false self of mask was disappearing. And this whole process, I don't know how many rounds I had. And then after that, I don't know what conducive food or non-conducive food I ate. And then late night I went to bed and so-called sensation of sleeping. And I was rolling in the bed. I'm just talking about my case, I don't know about others. So rolling in the bed, not feel like sleeping. There was a kind of a restlessness. And suddenly in the midnight, when the effect of alcohol disappeared, I got up, and then after some time I found it difficult to sleep, and then so on and so forth. And then when I get up in the morning, I had a severe overhang and a sense of nauseating feeling and some kind of a dullness which is not there during the course of my day-to-day getting up fresh morning, and so on and so forth. When you try to run this mental map of the what was the payout for you out of this whole consumption of alcohol, and what is the penalty that you have paid during the course of this whole experience, when you dispassionately sit and explore, experience and introspect, then you see the futility of this whole exercise, and then how much money I have wasted, and how far this is really influencing my family's well-being, and what could have been this money contributed for the education of my children or upbringing of my family to a better social status, and so on and so forth. So when you are trying to come out of it as though you are a different human being and examine the whole process of your behavior from start to end, then you slowly start thinking that the unconditioning process starts. The conditioning, whatever happened in the forward direction, the unconditioning starts happening in the backward direction. So I used to do this kind of analysis, and I used to see that how I was trying to spoil my image by getting drunk and behaving in a unhealthy manner, which is not commensurate to my status and stature. So gradually I realized that why I am trying to do this. So I could take charge of my mind and then re-educate it over a period of time. And then I came out of this habit of drinking and smoking. So smoking, for example, I used to look at why I was tempted to smoke. So I found one interesting characteristic: whenever I was anxious, whenever I was intimidated or challenged by something and feel helpless, then I feel like smoking. So in other words, I was punishing myself for my inability to overcome certain resistances in life. So you will notice that when the process of unconditioning is undertaken, you will figure out that the psychology with which you are really running the mental map, it is something like a program. When you open an app, it starts running with its own coding. In the same way, a conditioning is nothing but a coding. It's a kind of an application which starts running. So if you want to change the behavior of that application, then you need to go back and rewrite the coding. So rewriting the coding is possible only by human beings. An animal cannot do this, because an animal has been written with an operating system which are nothing but the basic instinct. They will never be able to recode themselves for a different behavior. For example, a lion cannot become a vegetarian, so it cannot choose that tomorrow onwards I am going to be a herbivore and then I'll start eating grass. It cannot do that, because those are all operating systems. You can never rewrite an operating system codes in any computer. In the same way, human beings are not changing their operating system. We are really trying to change the application which we have loaded many of them in our mind. So please remember, conditioning is nothing but loading a different app. The moment you like the app, then you start loading into your system. After some time, it becomes a load of garbage, and then that starts running our life. I'm sure in the topic of theory of happiness, it's extremely important to understand what do you mean by conditioning and unconditioning, etc. So I hope this session is useful to you for giving some directions and future opportunities. Thank you very much for a patient listening, and look forward to see you with many more concepts on the theory of happiness. Take care. God bless you.